Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and thank you so much for coming to this screening of what I just think is the best movie of the year, Room. At this time, please join me in welcoming two of the artists who brought this remarkable film to life. First, I want to introduce the director. If you haven't seen any of his other films, they include What Richard Did and, of course, Frank with Michael Fassbender. This guy had the sick imagination to cast Michael Fassbender and put him in a plaster head for a whole movie. Please welcome Lenny Abrahamson.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. Wow.
Also joining us is the actress who stars in the film. She has literally appeared in everything from 21 Jump Street to Don John to Short-Term 12. Still, I doubt even her biggest fans were prepared for a transformative work in this film. Please welcome Brie Larson. Thank you guys so much for being here. Congratulations on a wonderful movie, a very powerful movie. Because this is a SAG audience, we always like to start by asking the actors, how did you get your SAG card? Because you started young.
I did start
I mean, not
young.
that you're old now.
Wait, how much do you have to do before you get your SAG card?
Depends. You can be Taft-Hart lead, or I think it's like 3 spoken appearances. One spoken
Once,
appearance?
it just takes the first job. So my first job was doing a fake Barbie commercial for the Jay Leno show, or the Tonight Show. I was 8, I think, and it was called Malibu Mudslide Barbie. It was about all the mudslides we were having here, and I had to play just like a sweet little girl that seemed like a normal Barbie commercial where I had like a beautiful Barbie and a beautiful mansion. And then at the end, I dump this huge vat of mud on it, and all the Barbies go flying out of it.
Did you even know who Jay Leno was at the time?
I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing at all, except I got to ruin a whole doll house and dolls, which was very fun. And I had this dichotomy of having this very sweet-looking face, but then I had this like evil streak, and so they really loved it. And so I ended up doing I think like a dozen or maybe more of these fake toy commercials.
And please tell me these are online somewhere.
I actually have the Tonight Show people digging in the archives, and it's taken them, since Fallon switched over, it's taken them like 2 years to find them because they're all on like VHS and cataloged. So it's taken them 2 years, but I was just on the show like a week ago, and they were like, "We found them!"
They found it.
Yeah, so they will be released at some point. I'm thrilled. They were telling me the ones they found, and I didn't even remember. I remember a handful. I was so young, but they were like, "Oh no, you did all these other things. You did Roadkill Easy Bake Oven." I was like, "Great, can't wait to see it."
I think these could be DVD extras on the Room DVD.
Yeah, I can see that. They're going to fit
We don't really
beautifully.
have a ton of material for the DVD extras. This is not one that there's
It's
like
not
a
that kind
great
of
blooper
movie,
reel.
You say, oh, the hilarious bit where you slipped on your way out to the car.
It's
Oh, we got to
not
put that on.
Someone did ask me, they're like, "Is there any fun deleted scenes we can expect on the DVD?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can see some of the stuff that Jacob didn't see."
Yeah,
Oh, fun.
Wow.
This is not the type of film for that.
Well, congratulations again on this movie, which I should point out won the Audience Award at the Toronto Film Festival, the Hamptons Film Festival, and I believe you just said the Warsaw
Film Festival, so it went down well in Poland.
But particularly the Toronto Film Festival is a huge, huge honor, and sort of the first Audience Award you guys won. How did you get the news?
Well, I stopped. I was on my way home to Ireland from Toronto because we screened early in the festival. My wife and I stopped in New York because her mum was over looking after our kids in Ireland. So we obviously pretended that we had to stay for a bit longer in Toronto and said, "Is it okay?" And we stopped in New York. And I was just phoned up on, I think it was on Sunday morning. And I was genuinely shocked by it because even though I could tell, I think we could all tell that the audience had really responded to the film, it didn't, like on the outside, you don't think this is a film that's going to win audience awards. Just, you expect those films to be more obviously triumphant, but it did, and I nearly fell off the bed, I think, when I got the news. And that's hard to do.
And how did you hear?
That was great. I love your story.
I was really nervous about it. It had been sort of built up to me like, this is an amazing thing if it could happen, and it's a moment of triumph if it happens. And so I was like a nervous wreck about it. And I don't normally pay attention to these things, but I woke up to an email from my mom that was like, hey, they're going to do a live broadcast of the awards this morning starting at 9, and it was 9 a.m. And I thought there was just the People's Choice. That's how self-centered I am. I thought there was one award. And so I turned it on at 9, and I'm like, have it on my iPhone propped up on my stove. And I was like covered in a blanket. I was like making my tea. I was nervously walking around, just like waiting for this thing. And for an hour and a half, I was like, it's now. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. And I was so nervous. I got myself sick. I felt horrible. And finally, they announced the People's Choice, and we had won, and it was just jumping and crying, and I was so, so excited. And I get out, if anyone has the YouTube app, you go like that. And so I went like that and went into my email to say congratulations, and I realized I had about 30 emails from Lenny, from my team, from everybody from the movie, that from at 9:05 a.m. saying, congratulations, you won, no need to tune in. Don't need to worry yourself into a tizzy. We got it. We'd love to have some words, some thank yous if you got it. I missed the entire opportunity to thank anyone because I was watching and got an ulcer for no reason.
But I love the idea that it's so demonstrates like how much you just don't care about anybody else. None of us really care about anybody else. The best documentary. Yeah, best documentary. Okay, get on with
check it out later.
Yeah, best
point.
Canadian. Who cares? It's like, but it's your one, and it's amazing.
No.
Coming to Room, I know Emma Donoghue's book was a huge bestseller when it came out in 2010. I read it in one sitting. And I know also that every director wanted to make this movie. So how did it find its way to you, and how did you go about convincing her to give up this very, personal project? Well, she didn't give it up. I
didn't think that I would get it. I just thought I wanted to write to her to tell her what I felt about the novel, and had a very strong feeling about it when I read it, and very sort of strong images straight away, which is a sign that you there's some connection. And my little boy was about 4 when I read it, and I just could see him, and something so kind of moving about the kid's optimism in that place. That was the first thing that absolutely killed me, and also made me feel kind of, hopeful about things that, in a way that I sort of don't often feel. And so I just wrote to her because I thought, well, one way or the other, I probably won't get it. And I thought, but if I'm sitting in a cinema in a few years' time watching it, filled with just absolute sort of grisly, grumpy, depending on whether the film is good or bad. And I said to Brie earlier, I think it would have been worse. I think it's worse if the film is good and you didn't make it. I'd like to not say that. I'd like to show that I was a more mature person than that. But no, I think if somebody did it brilliantly, that would hurt me more. So I just wanted to write to her so that I'd at least said it. And that's how the conversation started. I wrote her a very long letter, and I think she had been pitched things and had just not felt that they were right. And for whatever reason, the two of us had a similar instinct about how a film adaptation might work, and that began this long conversation.
Well, she said you're both Irish, and you knew not to kiss her ass.
Yes, that is true. One thing an Irish person doesn't like, believe it or not, is having their ass kissed. And at least, no, I tell you, maybe the better way to say it, you've got to kiss it pretty skillfully. If it's too obvious that you're kissing the ass, then that doesn't go down well. But if there's just a nice tickly feeling, but you don't quite know where it's coming from.
I don't know.
So I think I probably was quite flattering, but I did it in that very deadpan Irish way that we both understood was okay. So.
And I know she had been holding out to write the screenplay. She felt very strongly about that, and worked with you for some time. But also, is it true she didn't sell you the rights until the first day of shooting?
Well, it was not far off that. I mean, we entered into it, and huge plaudits to the producer, Ed Guiney, and from long-time partner of mine in Dublin, Film 4, A24, all the people who were involved, Film Nation, all the people who were involved in making the film, that they accepted that we had this very unorthodox arrangement with Emma, which was that we're trusting her and she's trusting us, and we have an agreement to work together in good faith towards making the film. And at some point along that way, when all the papers will get signed, and that was quite it's a very, very unusual way to go about it, but it did allow us. I don't know. We never had any. We had plenty of, strong conversations, and we'd knock our heads together in the best possible way that you can when you're working creatively with somebody. But it was never tense or stressful. And I know that there is this common belief that you shouldn't. They say even as if you had that power, but let an author adapt their own work because they think they're going to be terribly precious. But she wasn't, and it was a very collaborative, very. But I was pleased when it finally got signed, I have to say.
And Brie, were you familiar with the book when it came out?
Yeah. I was given the book. I think it was like a year before I got the script, and I absolutely loved it. But Maud isn't really a full character. She's kind of just like an essence. And so it was very hard for me to fully at first believe that I was the person for it. It wasn't like, you read it and you're like, oh my God, I have brown hair and oh my God, this could be me. There's no description of her. She is everything. So to assume that I could be everything, or that I could be a mother figure to every imagination that I'd read the book, seemed rather presumptuous.
Because the book is told from Jack's point of view, and Emma would tell me that strangers hungered for more information about Ma. Yeah. They want to know more, and in some ways that's what the movie gets to give you.
Yeah, that's the beautiful part, is I think that the book and the movie become this nice two-hander of kind of different points of view or different aspects explored deeper in the book and then in the movie. So they work really well together, I think. But it's interesting because there was so much for us to create. It was every single choice was ours to create because there's nothing very specific about her. So it gave a ton of liberation and also a lot of scrutiny, because you have to try and you never want to be the person that's the disappointment, You don't want to be the person that's like, that's not what Ma looks like. And there was even someone who I will not say, who was a crew member, who after a week of shooting was like, really surprised by how you're playing Ma. I just thought she'd be more bubbly. And I was like, you didn't know about that?
Oh, that guy.
That makes sense. That's all I'll say.
That is not crazy. I was like, okay.
So I know that much like every director wanted to make this movie, every actress who claims to be in her 20s wanted to play this part. So how did you even go about narrowing down the field?
Well, we had our little list of people, and it was a very short list. With Fiona Weir, who's a great casting director based out of London, and we talked endlessly about it. But in fact, I was in the office, and it was somebody in administration who said to me, there's a film called Short Term 12, which is great, and there's this great actress in it, and you should check it out. And I did what film directors always do when people tell them things, which is to pretend to be really interested and then assume that you're just, because you'll obviously know better. And, we have top people working on this.
Yeah, you've got a casting director who's like, I'm not even on the list.
But
listen to administration sometimes.
Yeah.
They've got good ideas.
They were good. But yeah, there was a DVD, and I took it home and I watched it. That was the point at which so from that point on, I really felt it would be Brie. Mm-hmm. But we continued the process because it's a good thing to do. And I met with Brie and a couple of other really.
Continued to make me feel like maybe it wasn't going to be me, so that I could keep working hard and we could kind of see if this is going to work,
And met with people in LA, and we just had this fantastic meeting that went on for hours. And then I did read a few people, like literally 3 people, and that conversation continued through the audition process, which was just a great, relaxed, ideas fill thing. I mean, I think what was impressed me so much about Brie was I knew how deep she could go and I'd seen her do it on screen, but it was the fact that she was prepared to come into this audition without a kind of, you know, this is finished quality to, you know, this is what I'm going to give you. It was, she was also searching, and we were having this conversation together, and I think the best work that ever comes out of, you know, comes out as an ongoing collaboration between actor and director. It's not like, you know, so what I'm going to do is you show me what you're going to do, and I'm going to tell everybody where to put the camera. That's not what we did. You know, we really entered into it together, and it was that openness. I think that was the best part of it.
Can I ask which scene you auditioned with, or was it more than one?
No, there was a couple. It was like, I think it was like the first scene, like the birthday, all of the stuff surrounding the birthday and taking, eating the cereal. And then what we call the unlying scene, where I am explaining to him what the world is, and the interview scene.
Yeah.
I think that was it. I think there might have been also sort of like a little medley of little scenes within Room that we sort of squished together, but that was most of it.
Did you have a scene partner, or were you just delivering it
I
directly to the
had
camera?
a full-grown woman playing Jack, who wasn't that tall, so that was helpful.
But and she had long hair as well.
I
which
think
is
she
kinda good as
actually
well.
went on her knees.
She did, and because that made it so much more real for you.
Yeah,
But I do remember Emma Donoghue saying when she saw the tape, she thought there was a real kid there. So that was a pretty good sign.
And we of course have to talk about your scene partner for most of this movie, Jacob Tremblay, who's just phenomenal. Yeah. He's not here, but he deserves the applause.
You can feel it. You can feel it.
And something that is fascinating to me is you were both cast without ever, auditioning together. I mean, that's a huge leap of faith.
Well, except I suppose the thing is, it in a way, like Jake's this lovely little boy, and I had met him, and Brie was always going to be cast first. Ma was always going to be cast first because that's the linchpin of the film, and then you can cast from that. I think there has to be a child who sort of makes sense as this person's son, but it's not a huge leap of imagination to think that a little boy is going to love Brie. I mean, she, without sort of embarrassing her, but do it. Okay. She's incredibly warm and lovely, and just has this lovely positive energy, and she's exactly the sort of person that a little boy is going to just totally love. And that was another consideration that I talked with Emma about, and Ed, the producer, was just, you couldn't, if you cast somebody whose process was tremendously distancing, needed to be on their own, would disappear between takes, where there's that kind of tension around holding the character, would just never work, because that would, Jake wouldn't have understood it. I mean, he didn't even understand, the fact that Brie might cry for 10 seconds after a cut, because, like, what on earth are you crying about,
Exactly. Yeah, there needed to be a sense of resilience and Ma needed to be a character that I could access and step away from multiple times a day, and there could be no real tension around that. I couldn't be at a point where I was like, oh, I really need this, nobody look at me while I get ready. It's a very natural relationship, I think, that happens between parent and child, where, my mom always says that even now I call her and she's like, I'm on the toilet right now. You've managed to always interrupt me every time I pee since you were born. It's just this sort of relationship becomes so close that you become these two moving pieces together, and I needed it, and Jacob needed it. And that was the space that we created we spent that 3 weeks getting to know each other and working together and rehearsing in Room and doing improvs and building the toys that were in Room and doing all of these things, so that by the time we got to film, Room was very sacred and it was very womb-like, and it was a world that we would enter into, and like magical things would happen. And then it was also a space that we could exit, and we could look at takes and kind of reflect and decide how we wanted to continue to move forward, because we were shooting in chronological order. And so there was this thing that I had to really understand, and that's why I spent like 8 months preparing for this, and even working on, I remember like being in my car and I would feel myself, I would try and switch her on and then switch her off, so that it was a location in my brain that I could access at any moment that I needed, so that I could do things like do a scene with Jacob, which was pretty much all I did, and hold eye contact with him and give him the line, and then he would maybe say it, but maybe twitch his nose or pick up the cup at the wrong line, and I could say, okay, no, let's fix your hair, and let's fix this, and remember you're going to pick the cup up at this point, and you're going to do that, and then he could do it, and then I could enter back. So I could switch back and forth pretty quickly between Brie, who was looking out for him as Jacob, and Ma, who was looking out for Jack. And it would sometimes have to happen, I mean, so many times during the course of a take. And it was like a skill that I really refined and that I really loved, that by the time we hit the scene where we were doing, towards the end of the movie, where we were doing the Lego stuff, I remember our production designer coming up to me going, that was out of control, because we became so in tune with one another. We could really sense one another. It was a very cool thing.
Yeah.
And what other ways did you prepare for this role? I know you saw a nutritionist, and you sort of stayed in a lot.
Yeah, I had to stay in a lot because I had to be pale. And in Los Angeles, it's very hard to be away from the sun, and it's really hot. And so it was so much easier to just like be at home than be outside and like covered in sunglasses and a hat. So I stayed at home a lot. I was working out with a trainer to gain muscle, because we thought that, that her body is her only defense. She's also gone through a pregnancy. She's been holding a baby, and she's now wrestling with a boy and keeping him active. And so there would be this sense of muscle to her, regardless of the circumstances. And that, I think it gives you this immediate insight into her without saying a word, which is that despite the circumstances, despite some of the way that her face looks sort of raw and wounded, that she hasn't given up, that there's this sense of still a body and a life there, even though it's just sort of a little bit. So I did that, and it also worked to really tear me down. I would always, you feel sore, you feel pains, you feel this heaviness to your body. That really was very helpful, and then I continued working with the trainer all throughout shooting, so that by the time I hit set, I didn't have to like try and act like I felt this body. It was just there all the time.
Because I've talked to Jacob, and he says this was not a hard movie for him to make, because Jack is a happy kid. He doesn't know that there's a world outside, and he gets to play for most of the movie, but that it was very hard for you.
Well, I have more of the emotional stuff, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Not to downplay Jake's emotions, but I think my stuff is, because I'm showing the more complicated side of the story, there's just more stuff for me to try and handle and negotiate. Whereas it's true, the beauty of Jacob's storyline is that his point of view, he does grow through the story, but he's still a boy by the end of it. And you watch Ma go through like girl, woman, girl, woman, girl, woman, woman. So there's just more, I think.
We had an audience question from Shanta. Forgive me if I pronounce anyone's name. Wanted to know, did either of you have an opportunity to speak in depth with women who survived captivity situations, like the Austrian women imprisoned? What did you learn that you had not thought of before?
No, I don't think any of us spoke directly to anybody who'd experienced it. I think we all felt that it would be an intrusion even to sort of make contact in that way. I know Joan Allen, for example, was thinking about it, and then she decided the same, that it was probably better not to. But we did, all of us, look at a lot of material, looked at footage of people talking, looked at interviews, read about the cases. And I think there are ways that's really useful. I mean, some really practical ways for a director just to think about, what the spaces looked like after a long period of time, or what the homecomings felt like. But actually, in a funny way, I think there's no escaping the necessity for an active imagination when you're trying to think about a world as alien as the world in there, and in fact as alien as the experience of returning from a place like that, because you can't in a funny way rely on people's testimony, because people's memories become anecdotes, and those anecdotes get really, become kind of conventionalized, and so people aren't often. You can listen, but you can't. I mean, somebody can say, I was really scared, but what exact flavor of scared is that going to be? How's it going to manifest itself? What will that feel like? That's the job of writers and artists, to try to give, substance to that. I don't think you can research your way into character. I think you can research your way to a kind of shape, but then you do always have to step in. I mean, I'm not an actor, but my sense of working with actors is that you try to help them to make that leap, which is a much more imaginative thing.
And I think it was always, for us, learning as much as we could about the fact of it so that we could reduce it to a point that was universal. So it wasn't about the spectacle, the bizarre nature, the uniqueness of this case. It was actually about the ordinary nature of it. So it took really learning as much as possible, and we spoke with the trauma specialist about how the brain would organize this type of trauma. But it was always like, how do we relate it back to a story that we know, so that these people don't become this thing that we're looking at in this voyeuristic way, going, wow, how did this happen? And how could they do this? And how that's what it's like. Instead, you're going, oh, I know this. I don't know why I know this, but I know it.
Emma used a great phrase for your performance. She said it's a Russian doll of a performance, because Ma has to be so many things to so many people. And then there's even scenes where she's pretending that Jack is dead and trying to fool her captor. Like, so much is going on. What did end up being the most difficult scene for you?
I don't know. The most difficult? Do you remember?
I think they were not those scenes. They were the scenes where you're trying to. I remember the hardest stuff for us, at least, and maybe you don't see it the same way, but arrival back at the house. Because how on earth do you find
how do we know
what that
is?
would be like, coming back to your parental home after 7 years and trying to keep it okay for the kid? That's so complicated.
Yeah, it was always the scenes where there's so many things happening at once. Because something like an emotional outburst, it's sort of clear in its intention and the direction that it's going to go in. But when it's something like, or even when I'm trying to convince Jack of being rolled up and being sick, I remember that being like, I give up. I don't know how I'm supposed to do it, because it's a combination of so much going on inside of her, along with trying to reveal almost nothing. But how do you reveal nothing but give enough to an audience that they don't think that they're kind of on the same level as her? So it became this fine-tuned thing of trying to find the split-second moment, because it's really all you need is a micro-expression of how do we say so much in just these little flicks. And so we would really work on it a lot, and those were the times that I would spend time rewatching the footage to really make sure that it was there, because you don't want to do the big display, and so that takes a lot of scrutiny to get those little fine-tuned moments.
And I have to say, it was what I learned about Brie was that she would always, on the day of one of those big scenes, like the rolling up in rug scene, or when Jack is carried away, for example, she would always come up to me at some point in the morning and say, just so that you know, this is not going to be great. She'd always do it.
And
and
it's going to be really bad.
This isn't going to be. But listen, she'd say, "Look, we'll get there. It's fine." She'd have this long conversation with me where I wouldn't actually say anything. She'd say, it's not going to be great. I don't know if I will, but it's bad. But we'll, that's part of the process, and it'll be fine." And I'm, so she was having both sides of the conversation, and I learned just to let her do that, and that's just part of the preparation to go. And in a way, it's good, because you're sort of saying, I think you walked away from those conversations going, he didn't seem too freaked out, so therefore it's probably all right. And then I can just have a go, and it'll be fine. And then it was always amazing.
Yes, it's whatever I could do to eliminate there being any thought from reality in my head. So instead I could just dive in and go as far as I could, and then you could be there as sort of a voice going, do it more like this, try it like that. I'd be like, okay, yeah, and keep sort of swimming in it instead of ever having the thought of, I'm letting Lenny down, or he's looking at the monitor right now going,
Frowning.
what the heck is that? This is what she's giving me today? As whatever I could do to just eliminate that so that you can feel like you're free falling into something and there isn't this. It's very complicated, or it can be complicated, the relationship between actor and director, because it's this bizarre handshake where you're like, I will give you a performance. And the director's like, and I will help facilitate that. And I will also judge you. So it's like, it's very weird. So you have to find a way to create this rapport. And that's why I think I always gravitate towards directors that have a really great sense of humor and also are not judgmental.
Yeah, if you're judgmental, I think all that you get then is somebody either kicking against you or trying to please you. Neither of those two things are that useful. I think you've got to give somebody the room, as Brie says, to dive in and swim. And if you trust them and you know what they've really got, then you can just have that conversation about what you see and what it felt like and help that person by being this external eye on what they're doing. But the idea that you stand there kind of scratching your chin and going yes or no, I just don't think that's ever going to get you to the same places that you got in this.
And is it true you don't really the scene where you and Jack are reunited in the back of the police car? You don't even really remember the first take of that?
No, I don't. I don't remember any of the takes. I remember the moments directly afterwards because Jacob kept pulling me back to reality. He would push away from me and be like, this is weird. Why are you still crying? And he would sing songs to me, and he was constantly trying to cheer me up. So those I remember. But any of the actual running to the car, because I remember 10 minutes before we shot it. I remember sitting in the passenger seat of the van. I remember I was eating a snack. I remember I was really making a lot of jokes. And I was thinking, Brie, stop goofing off. You've got to do something that's serious, and you're not. Why aren't you like in a corner making yourself upset about something? And I wasn't. And I remembered like kind of going to my mark and kind of just throwing my hands up and going, I don't know. I don't know if I have it, I don't know if I know what I'm doing. And then some weird thing happens where you kind of get sucked in and transported into something that I really feel like does not exist in time or in space maybe, but definitely not in time, because the level of consistent emotion, especially in that scene, that rage, even the whole escape sequence requires so much from me that I don't think a normal human being in this normal plane of existence can really do that for that long. You have an outburst and you're done, or you watch it and it's 5 minutes in the movie, but that's, days of work. And so it wasn't until like maybe a week later when the police officers were working on we were doing another scene, and Amanda, who plays the main one, the woman, she's so wonderful, she was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. She was like, but are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. It's just a movie. And she was like, but like physically, are you okay? And she explained to me that Lenny had just told me to run out and try and find Jacob, and he didn't say which car he was going to be in. He didn't tell me there was going to be a locked car door. He just said, you run out and try and find him. And then he simultaneously told the police people not what I was going to do, but just said, there's going to be a woman running. You got to try and get a coat on her. You got to try and calm her down and get her into the police car or whatever. And so we had these two clashes of these two things happening. And what I did not remember was that as I was running, then this team of police officers came and tried to put a coat on me, and I guess I was like punching them and hitting them and screaming at them. And then as I was pushing them, there was ice on the ground because it was the dead of winter, and I slipped and I fell, and then I got back up again and was cursing at them and ran out, and then was just out of my mind upset over the fact that this door was locked. And when I went to dive in to grab Jacob, I hit my head on the car. I had no memory of any of this, but I did the next morning go like, why do I have these bruises? I had no memory of it at all.
Jacob is very funny because I asked him if he'd seen the movie, and he's like, "Yeah, I've seen it 4 times with my mom, and she always cries, so I don't know why she wants to keep watching it." And I was like, "Well, I cry too, but I cry at the happy things too. Like I cry when I'm happy." And he goes, "Really? That's strange." Like, and it just sort of like grounds you, and it must be like a nice presence to have on set.
Oh, sure.
Vital, absolutely vital, right?
Yeah, you can't go all sort of deep and internal when you've got a kid, just running around and wants to play with you all the time. Which is that also is to do with that also reflects what's going on in the film, and it reflects what goes on in every household where there are children, which is adults have to keep their bigger, darker, scarier stuff separate, and they never fully succeed in doing it. And kids feel those shadows, but they also have that semi-permeable cocoon. And so how things worked on set was sort of similar in a way to what was happening in the film. And
I do want to take a couple more audience questions real quick. There's a question from Chloe for Brie. You've been auditioning and working for years. Have you dealt with casting directors or even your own representatives telling you you're too edgy, or that you need to try and conform to fit the typical prototype for female actresses?
Of course. But the prototype sort of changes. Like there's like a flavor. We're really into banana right now, and everyone's got to be banana. And then the next is like, no, we love blue raspberry now, and then everyone's got to be that. Like,
I realized that's a metaphor for the beginning. I thought, what's banana? What do you mean by banana?
No, I mean,
is that a trend in acting that I haven't picked up?
It's the banana trend and the blue raspberry trend. No, I just mean somebody is something about themselves. Some actor breaks through and does something that you haven't seen, and suddenly we think, oh, that's the magic formula, and everybody has to do that. So everyone, go do that. And it's not the case. And it's unquantifiable what an actor does. It's not. I always felt so frustrated by the audition process, by my what felt like lack of control and lack of time to explain myself. I'm coming in and I'm going to do these sides, and you think that I can read your mind, but really what I would love is a creative conversation, and really what I would love is for you to assume that I know what I'm doing and that I'm not an idiot, and that if it's wrong, you can redirect me instead of it being this sort of hard yes or no all the time. And then if it is, sometimes there's like a yes contingent upon if you come back in heels or whatever. There's always you'll get these weird requests. And for the longest time, I found that very painful, because I wouldn't get jobs because I didn't have blue eyes, or because I was tall, or because I was too edgy or not edgy enough. For most of my career, I never fell into a cliche, and therefore I was unusable. I wasn't the popular girl, but I wasn't the mousy girl. So I'm no one. And so it was always the thing that my representation, though, were very clear with me, saying, I know this hurts. It's the tool, though, that will be invaluable later, because you will be able to be all the things that you want to be. But right now, it's not easy because you're not so obviously pinned down as one thing. And as I auditioned more and grew up and sort of started really hearing more of when people would be like, sorry, it's not going to happen because you don't have blue eyes, I'd feel myself, instead of going, yeah, I don't, being like, yeah, I don't. I have brown eyes. So what? And if you don't want that, then somebody else will like brown eyes. Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. But it's true, you become more, that those sort of no's and that experience of being told what you're not, it just instead can become this beautiful reminder of what you are.
I have another question from Joanna. Wants to know, you've played so many different kinds of roles. What sort of role or genre would you like to tackle next? Actually, I want both of you to answer this. Yeah.
Well, maybe I've never done anything that you could say was a genre film. Certainly not Frank, that's for sure. Or if it is, that would be a strange genre to make more of. But I think there are a couple of things I would really, really love to find a properly emotional and intelligent science fiction, because I think there's such great science fiction literature, even from middle of the last century, much earlier. and science fiction has got very big and very loud and a bit dumb. And I think there's something about those stories and ways, in the way that Room talks about something universal by taking us inside quite an extreme situation. I think science fiction provides all of these contexts where you can explore things that we all relate to, but very vividly. So that's probably the one genre in quotes thing that I'd be interested in trying.
Sci-fi is almost, I don't want to say the opposite of this, but that's a big, possibly a bigger budget. You've always kind of made smaller budget films.
Yeah, I mean, budget-wise, but I've seen, there's a great sci-fi called Moon. I don't know if anybody's seen it, with Sam Rockwell. They made that for $1 million, I think.
No way.
And I mean, that would be, that's tough. I'm sure it should have cost more, but and I also have, there's a project very close to my heart, which is an American Civil War story, again with a female lead who disguises herself as a man to join the army. It's really excellent, based on a very excellent novel, and it's also large, you know. But I think there's a way, I really firmly believe there's a way of making films for a real audience that justify those budgets, but that are intelligent. I think people really underestimate audiences. And it's really amazing if you look at television. And television, people used to say, okay, well, with TV, you've got to be super quick and really straight into it because, you know, everybody's sitting there with the remote. And you look at some of the most amazing writing that's happening on US TV and cable TV and VOD, where it can be slow, intelligent, the characters are difficult, you know, all of these things. So, and people watch them with massive commitment. And so I think the cinema needs to allow its audiences a certain amount of respect, I think, and you know, that's what I'd like to try.
And now this is where Brie tells us that the role she's dying to play is of a woman in the Civil
War,
War who disguises herself as a man.
I was thinking though. I would love to play a man, and then you said that. But I don't know anything about that project. Maybe it's good.
You know, Brie, it's early days.
Maybe
you know what
we
I'm saying?
could take a meeting about
We'll talk
it.
about that. I
Okay,
don't think it's an
great.
appropriate forum for that conversation.
I'm trying to think. There's no genre for me that's a no. I'm not cute. I would never do a Saw movie, like Saw 7 or whatever they're on now. That's not for me. There's no world where I would do today I'm gonna get my arm chopped off. That's not me. But there's nothing that is off the table because I like the subtext. So the face can be whatever. It's the subtext that I'm interested in, and I'm fascinated by the way that it can take different shapes. But I am also, I'm fascinated by, Ma in Room is in a way many different people, the way that we are as human beings, that it doesn't all have to be wrapped up in this pretty little bow, that it can be a Russian doll, it can be complicated, and it can be contradictory. And I really enjoy playing contradictory characters.
And I want to remind everyone that this movie is now playing in New York and Los Angeles and goes wide on November 6th, I believe. So please spread the word. And thank you guys for being such a great audience. Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks, Jenelle. Thank you. Nice
We
one.
did it! Woo!